Well, I am super excited today because I get to put the V6 Ranger head to head with the 𝗬𝗢𝗚𝗟𝗏 Everest. Now we are going to be towing a 16-foot MDC Caravan. We're going to be doing fuel consumption tests. We're actually going to see how they both wheel against each other, towing the van so you can get in and out of campsites. I tell you what, I reckon we're both going to learn so much from this experience, and I'm super excited to deliver it to you. So stay tuned because this is going to be absolutely cracking.
The first vehicle we tested is the 2023 V6 Ford Ranger. Now this vehicle has been hugely popular here in Australia, and we can see why. Let's look further at some of the Ranger specifications. The new V6 Ranger as tested here is in XLT form with a tow pack and is priced at around $73,000 drive away. The next generation Ranger comes with a number of engine options, but the two we have tested here is the new 3-litre V6 diesel, putting out 184 kilowatts at 3,250 RPM and producing 600 Newton meters of torque at 1,750 to 2,250 RPM. The engine is paired to a 10-speed automatic transmission. We know how important GVM and GCM and payload figures are, so let's run through those specs on the Ranger we are testing now. It has a GVM of 3,280 kilograms and a curb weight of 2,320 kilograms, leaving you with a payload of 960 kilograms maximum. Now GCM comes in at 6,400 kilograms for this vehicle. Now let's get into the tow test to see what all these numbers mean in the real world. Is it a good vehicle for towing, or does the Everest make a better tow vehicle? Let's find out.
Well, the reverse camera is sensational backing onto this van here. So folks, this is stock standard suspension, stock size tyres, stock everything about these cars. That's actually sitting pretty good. So, plug these plugs in and we should be right to hit the road. Got the breakaway connected to its own separate D-shackle onto the tow bar. Now what I like about these Ranger ones, there's plenty of space. You've got enough room for the two shackles there to go on. So that's a plus. Get them nipped up. Handbrake off. That clipped on. I reckon we're right to rock and roll. So something that I've learnt from the MDC guys, okay, there's nothing worse than knocking your jockey wheel around when you're traveling. So see how that's like that, you know, floats around. You might go over something, it'll grab this and it'll tear off. So they taught me to hold that up like that and give that attention, and then that misses everything and it doesn't hang down. I reckon that's a cool little trick for, you know, anything. Box trailers, car trailers, caravans, the works and jerks. I do that now on everything I tow. Well, I can tell you straight off the bat, just driving from my house down to the service station on the highway, this Ranger is towing it splendidly. It's got plenty of power, it's smooth, it's riding sensational. It's just a great package, you know. The V6 doesn't seem to be struggling. You know, the average fuel economy on the dash is still 12.8 litres per 100, which is absolutely unbelievable. But we'll soon find out because we're going to be going through some pretty undulating hills and some dirt road and some tight track. So servo's coming up here, folks. I'll go in, I'll get it all fueled up, I'll get everything zeroed off, the fuel economy, the whole works and jerks. We'll do our big lap of about 100 odd Ks and we'll come back to the servo and we'll actually give a true reading of how much fuel this thing has used. I'm going to zero everything here. So fuel consumption just got zeroed, The trip meter just got zeroed. The whole works and jerks. Started a timer. It's going to log my average speed on the computer, which I think is pretty cool. Currently, it says I can get 600 Ks to a tank of fuel on this V6 Ranger. Well, we're only going to be doing 100 odd Ks. It'll give us an average. Remember that we're not just cruising down a flat highway. We are trying to get every different part of terrain in that 100 Ks to give an average of a bit of nice flat road, some downhill, there's some uphill, you know, there's some tight, windy, slow tracks, trying to condense it into that 100 odd Ks. So it's not going to get the same economy as what you may get going down the highway, just cruising down somewhere like that. This is a real life type of scenario that takes into consideration the big hills, the dirt roads, the tracks, the whole works. So bear with me, because I've had a bit of kickback on other videos saying, well, I get way better fuel economy on this and I get way better fuel economy on that. And look, that's fair enough, you probably do, but I'm trying to give it a real hard crack. It may use more fuel than other vehicles, or may use more fuel than yours, but it's not doing the same circuit. So I think it's going to be a pretty good test, and yeah, be pretty wicked. Cruising along the dirt road now, and I'd like to talk about tyre pressures. Now, tyre pressures are a pretty important thing when you're four-wheel driving or going off-road, but they're also pretty important when you're travelling on some gravel roads. Now, if you leave them at full pressure, say you're running 40 psi in your car, and for example, the Caravan is at 70 pound because it's a single axle, you know, if you're going to leave them at full pressure and you're cruising along a pretty rough dirt road, that's going to be a horrible ride. It's going to shake your car to pieces. It's going to shake the Caravan to pieces. So my recommendation is to lower your tyre pressures. Now, lowering tyre pressures, it all varies on what you believe the terrain is like at the time. And you've got to remember as well, you've got to drive to the conditions of the road. So therefore, tyre pressures will vary. But say you've got like the PDR heading up to Cape York, it can get rough in spots, it's pretty smooth in spots, okay? But if I was going to be tackling that dirt road in that condition, I'd lower my pressures probably down to 28 psi. And for example, on the Caravan, that'll be running at 70 on highway pressures. I'd drop that to probably 45, 50 and give it some breathing space and just assess the situation. You know, if you're still getting shaken around and all the rest of the stuff, get out, take a little bit more air out of your tyres, and you know, like I say, driving to the conditions is a major factor. Guys, that's just my 2 cents worth about tyre pressure. This road here has just been graded, so I'm not going to bother lowering the tyre pressure at all. It's smooth as, it's just a nice undulating road that's part of our towing test for the fuel economy, and we're going to get up to 𝗬𝗢𝗨'𝗟𝗏 Lookout in a minute and you know, show you the view. It's absolutely sensational up there. I'll tell you what, the view from this place never gets old. I love it. Sensational view out towards Brisbane. There's a few people here today admiring the view. How good's that? You know what, folks? That view never gets old, and it's only a few minutes drive from the office. Well, half an hour anyway, that's nothing these days. To come out here and have a look at that, I just have to stop every time I come here because I just absolutely love it. Well, that view, folks, is just stupendous. Beautiful. 360-degree views from up here actually, because I'm just driving out and the view over there to the west is just, wow. All the places travel around the world in Australia. You know, southeast Queensland has some sensational spots too. You know, you've got the Gold Coast hinterland, you know, you've got out this way. You know, you've just got so much at your fingertips. We're very, very lucky to live where we live. I like coming this way because Perseverance Dam's pretty specky, you know, crossing these dam walls and all the rock formations and all that sort of stuff. And there's a really cool steep climb coming out of here. So it's really good to see how the vehicle's going to react holding gears or doing whatever. Okay, so here we go. It's just in drive. It's very torquey, this V6. It's like the trailer's not even there. So towing 3.5 tonne with this, I think it'd do it, you know, with ease also. Let's see what it's doing. If I flick it into manual, see it's in 4th gear. I'm backing off for the corners. I'll flick it back to auto. You know, it's just holding 4th, and it's a pretty steep climb. It's windy. I'm doing 45k an hour. It's creeping up to 50. 50k an hour now, heading up this hill, still holding 4th, don't have much, you know, down on the throttle, it's just climbing. Like, back off to the corner again, it was up to about 55. These are a good thing, folks. And the new 10-speed box, I know in the bi-turbos, in the old Ranger, the 10-speed box used to hunt lots of gears. Now, I think with the tune they've got in it, and it's a bit of a more of a beefed up gearbox, especially for these V6 ones. I'll have to check for the bi-turbo. I can imagine they're the same box, but these ones here apparently are suited to the V6 petrol twin turbo. So they're a pretty strong gearbox. That doesn't change gears, it's just kept 4th gear. Wow. We're going down the 𝗬𝗢𝗨 range, and this is going to be interesting. It's got quite a steep descent. You know, we've got 2.7 tonnes pushing it. Now, obviously all cars have got a bit of a gyro in them now, so it tells you what angle. It's a 10% gradient, so reasonably steep. So it should actually kick back a gear. How about we put it in manual mode? So it's in 4th at the moment, it's wanting to run away. Okay, typical diesel. Let's take it out of manual mode. Let's chuck it in cruise control maybe. All right, let's chuck it in there. Righto. So it's adaptive cruise control. We're going down a 10% gradient. I got it set to 60k zone. I got it set at 50. This is doing pretty good. Maybe if you're going down a hill, throw her in cruise control, and the adaptive cruise will just do the rest for you. It'll pick the right gear. It'll use the brakes. New technology. Absolutely sensational. Well, we managed to go down the range pretty damn good. I think the Ranger went pretty well. All diesels don't have huge amounts of engine braking, but I put it on cruise control, and it braked, it used the gears that it wanted to, and it held a really great speed down there, as you would imagine in the new modern day cars with the adaptive cruise. I'm now pulling back into the servo, so now this is crunch time. It's actually going to tell us how fuel efficient this V6 Ranger really is. Well, that was an interesting bit of a trip. 111 k's, very, very steep gravel road. You know, we had a look at 𝗬𝗢𝗨'𝗟𝗟 lookout. We came back down, just bypassed the southern side of Crow's Nest, went through the pine forest, back down the highway through Highfields into 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗟𝗟. Now down the range, crunch time folks, we'll actually see how much this is actually used. Here we go, same Bowser folks. Now always do 20 to 30 second clicks, so we're going to wait for the first click when the fuel pump says it's full. I'll count to 30 and I'll pull the trigger again and wait for it to click off, so we've got a true indication that the tank is actually full. Well, there you go, first click, 18.12 litres. Let's give it another go. 18.96. I reckon that's about all she's going to take. Fuel's just there, so it's not going to take any more. For a V6 diesel, out of all the cars I've done this with, this has used the least. But this is towing a more relative size caravan than what we were before. The other van weighed in at 3.5 tonne. This van weighs in at 2.7, but I still reckon that's pretty awesome for 111 Ks. So we'll run the proper numbers, and yeah, maybe my prediction's going to be around 17.5 litres per 100 towing the van up them big steep hills and everything. So that'll be sick. Well, it's all fueled up, folks. So we're going to head back to the workshop. We're going to swap it over with the Everest, and we'll crunch some numbers and see what fuel economy this got.
Now with the Ranger tow test out of the way, it's time to see how the Everest performs. Even though the Everest is based off a similar platform to the Ranger, it is a very different vehicle and is tested here in a different spec also. The next gen Everest, as tested here, is in trend form. With the bi-turbo 4-cylinder engine and touring pack, it's priced at around $74,500 drive away. The Everest we tested is fitted with the 2-litre bi-turbo, which has been around for a few years now in the previous model. This puts out 154 kilowatts at 3,750 RPM and a decent 500 Newton meters of torque at 1,750 to 2,000 RPM. In comparison, the Everest has a GVM of 3,150 kilograms, which is a bit lower than the Ranger, and a curb weight of 2,488 kilograms, leaving you with the payload of 662 kilograms maximum. This is certainly something to take into account when choosing your towing or touring vehicle. GCM comes in at 6,250 kilograms for this vehicle, so it's down 150 kilograms on the Ranger.
Well, it's another fabulous day, and today is the day we're going to take the bi-turbo out, hooked onto the van. So I'm just going to hook onto it now, and I'm going to race down to the servo and fill it up, and then our test starts. It's back onto this big thing. Just like the Ranger, it's got an absolutely sensational camera. Well, here's our first dilemma, folks. I don't like the tow bar on the Everest, and the reason why takes us back to the same dramas you have with other tow bars. It's unlike the Ranger, there's no room to connect your breakaway, so you're going to have to put your breakaway back on your ordinary D-shackle with your chains, and we all know why that happens, because if you lose your van or your trailer, usually your chains are gone, you know, and look, you could be lucky and it still might be attached, but they really need to be attached to the vehicle, so there's no room to actually do that. So that's yeah, not great. First negative comment about the Everest. Right, chuck your wheels up. The hitch is connected, the chains are on, the plugs are all in. See, I don't like where that plug is there. I've gone in behind the chain. I'm going to move that one, bring it back out in front. Okay, good spot now. All right, time to rock and roll. Righto. We're going to be ready to send her. To keep in mind about Everest, they've got to add blue. Now, I know you get a long way on a tank of AdBlue, but that's something to be mindful of when you are touring around Australia, especially remote places, because they're not going to have it. So guys, that's probably the only downfall I would say to the wagon so far. It was a great drive to the servo here, but we'll soon see how it actually really goes. We're all fueled up and little Everest is going extremely well. These bi-turbos, it is towing this van like nothing as well. So this is going to be a pretty interesting test, to be honest, to see what fuel figures come out of it and how it goes up the steep inclines and how it goes down the range and all that sort of jazz. But so far, I am really impressed with the bi-turbo. Like I'm a cubic inches man. I like the idea of more cylinders, V6, the works and jerks. But so far, this is really surprising. And this is, like I said, bog stock suspension, standard coils, no airbags, the works completely standard. We've hooked the van on, it's squatted a little bit at the back, but it's riding nice. It's towing this fabulous. Yeah, I'm super impressed. My prediction being coil in the rear, this is going to ride very nice on the gravel road, even though the gravel road has been graded. Hit the dirt, and my suspicions are correct. Being a coil sprung car in the rear, the ride is just that little bit nicer than the dual cab ute. In saying that though, the dual cab ute had no weight in the back of it or anything like that, so I think the leaf springs were going pretty well. I'm impressed so far with the power that this Everest has got, the bi-turbo. If you want the extra bit of pep in your step, I suppose you're just going to have to take the V6, but I think this bi-turbo is going to be able to do everything that the V6 can do, and nearly as well. And sneaky suspicion, I reckon the fuel economy, I don't reckon it'll be much different, to be honest, because the 2 litre is going to have to work just that little bit harder than the V6. So sitting in the Everest is practically exactly the same as sitting in the dual cab. Okay, the screen is the same, you know, everything is the same. The steering wheel, the dash, the layout right here is identical, except for the little drive mode switches in here. The dual cab's slightly different, but seating position is awesome, the same. It's just, I think the Everest is a fabulous package. If you're chasing a wagon, man, these are going to be hard to go past. Well, we've been climbing some hills with the Everest now, and you can see where the bi-turbo 2 litre lacks from the 3 litre V6. Obviously the V6 is doing it a hell of a lot easier. This is kicking back lower gears. You've really got to feed it into it a bit. So, you know, that's going to change how the fuel economy is going to react as well. So it was cruising along fine when we weren't climbing too steep of a hill, but now we got to the big steep hills, it's going to be sucking the fuel because it's working a lot harder than the V6. But in saying that, I'll tell you what, it's still towing this van like it's not there, you know, which is very surprising for a 2 litre turbo diesel car, in my opinion.
As you can see, we've come right down from the valley there and we've climbed our way up through all these hills. We've ended up right up the top here. Now, the V6 did it with ease yesterday. And look, the 2 litre has been doing it pretty easy as well, in my opinion, for a 2 litre diesel. But the V6 has got it with how much torque it's got and the ease of pulling it. But you know what? This bi-turbo is actually blowing me away. The Everest is really, really comfy as well. That'd be the coil springs in the rear. The only thing is, when I hit the same sort of bump yesterday in the V6, obviously in the dual cab, it's got the leaf springs. The ride in the Everest is great until you get to that bit more of a bigger washout. Now, the Everest hit that today, and I think the dual cab with the leaf springs soaked it up better, just because I think it's set up a little bit more stiffer in the rear and all that sort of stuff. I think the Everest may have hit the bump stops and it was just a little bit of a jerk. But, you know, if you're gonna be doing long distance touring and you're going to be towing a van all over the countryside, you're probably going to upgrade your suspension anyway. You're going to have some airbags in there, and you're probably not going to suffer the same consequences as what I did with the car jolting around, hitting the bottom of the rut and hitting on the bump stops. You know, I've got a fair bit more to drive yet. We've got to go over Perseverance Dam. We've got to go back around through Crow's Nest and go through the pine forest and go back into 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗟𝗓 and then head back down the range. So we've got a few more Ks to let me think about which car and which engine I would prefer. Now, this is going to be a tough call. It really is, because I'm super impressed with the 2 litre and I never ever thought I would be. So anyway guys, I soaked in the view and a bit of sun. Let's get cracking right back into it. So, as we did yesterday, we climbed up out of this quite steep hill. Just flick that into manual, just flick that into manual and just checked what gear it was in, and it's in 4th, the same as the V6. Man, I'm slowing down for the corners too. This is just, you know, I've put it back into drive. We'll see if it kicks back to 3rd. No, heading back up to 50k an hour now, up this hill. Nearly 55. Now look, I'm not really squeezing hard on the throttle either. Like, this would kick back gears and take off, but you know, the corners, it's not going to be very pleasant towing it around the corners at higher speed than this. It's a 60 zone anyway. Wow, I would not have thought that it would pull up here nearly or just as easy as the V6. Wow, this is the little motor that could. Same gear as the V6 and same speeds, with probably maybe a smidgen more on the throttle, maybe. We're on the highway stretch now. It's going to be a nice run home. The adaptive cruise control's on, and you know, just nice and easy. It's towing the van beautifully along the highway. We were just doing 100 before. We've now slowed it back to 80 for the 80 zone. There's a car in front of me, and yeah, look, I'm impressed. You know, on another note, we'll talk about the Everest station wagon. I think Ford has absolutely nailed it in this department. It's a great size vehicle. It's really comfortable. The seats are comfy.
I just like it as a general all-round car. I would certainly have one of these as a family car. We're coming into town, and another thing that you sort of probably wonder when you're towing, especially in a smaller capacity car, how does it take off from the lights? Are you going to hold the traffic up or anything like that? Well, we'll soon see. I'm at a red light now. It's fairly flat ground. It's been accelerating pretty good all day, but from a dead stop like this in a traffic scenario, it's interesting to see how it goes. Here we go. There's a bit of lag. Look at that. Towing the van. I'm up to 60k an hour already. You're not, you know, holding the traffic up. You're not doing anything like that. Yep. 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗘𝗗, it just continues to impress me. Well, we're getting ready to go down the range again. We've been through town. The car has been behaving fantastically. I'm going to try in manual mode like I did yesterday for a little bit and see if it's going to want to really run away. And after that, I'm going to try it in adaptive cruise control. Here we go. We'll put it in manual mode, in fourth. We tried third yesterday. Back a second. It's not. No, it's a little bit worse than the V6 diesel, which you'd expect as well. You know, you've got an extra litre capacity engine there. So we'll just whack on the cruise control. Well, 111 k's, exactly the same. Well, let's see how many litres this one actually took. I'm actually super impressed with the 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗘𝗗. I really am. And if this takes, you know, a decent amount less than the V6, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a hard choice because it towed the van sensationally, you know, with ease, did everything you'd want it to do, and if it uses way less fuel, wow. We'll just wait for a while for it to settle and we'll give it its second click. 17.75 litres for 111 k's. Now, I can tell you right now, that's beat the V6. But by how much? Number crunching time. Let's see how much better the 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗚𝗚 did than the V6, pulling the same thing. Well, that has been an interesting experience driving both the 2 litre 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗚𝗚 and the 3 litre V6. Now, all I can say is that they fixed the gearboxes from the previous 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗚𝗚s. They don't hunt gears and they are absolutely incredible gearboxes, these ones. That said, we'll get on to the power delivery. I tell you what, I'm torn because the 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗚𝗚s are cheaper to buy. It towed that van like it wasn't even behind it, just like the V6 on the test track. They're a really, really good thing. If you're going to be only towing 3 or 4 times a year for holidays or something like that, there'd be no need to go to a V6. You'd save yourself some money and you'd buy the 𝗕𝗢𝗚𝗚𝗚 and save yourself a whole lot of fuel economy through the year, because these are going to use less fuel driving around town, less fuel, you know, towing a small box trailer or whatever else. They're really, really good. I'm super impressed. The V6, if you're going to be towing a plant trailer, you're a builder, or you're going to have a caravan on all the time, the V6 has it hands down. So for towing 2.7 tonne around, the fuel economy figures have absolutely blown my mind because I'm used to big thirsty trucks, right? So this one got 15.96 litres per 100 on the test track, so 16 litres per 100. And the big V6 doing exactly the same thing, doing the same amount of Ks, got 17 litres per 100. So practically a litre difference. Now, in the long run, over a long time, yeah, it's going to save you some money going to buy turbo, but that to me is super impressive from the V6. One thing that I didn't talk to the GoPro about was when I was towing the Caravan up the 𝗬𝗢𝗨 range in either vehicle. Now, I drove up first in the V6, you know, it just did it with ease. Drove up with the 2 litre and it did it at the speed limit, but I had to have the foot buried. And that's the only time on that really big long pull is where I noticed the big difference between having the V6 3 litre versus the 2 litre bi-turbo. But in saying that, if you're only towing, you know, a handful of times a year, up to 6-8 times or whatever, this bi-turbo is going to do it hands down easy as, and you're going to save some bucks because it doesn't use as much fuel, and you're going to use it as a daily driver. Where if you're going to be towing every day or at least once a week or something like that, once a fortnight, hands down the V6 has it all over the bi-turbo. It's just going to do things easier, and for me that means it's probably going to put less strain on every component in the car. So folks, at the end of the day, you guys have got the hard decision because it's hard to split these. They are absolutely phenomenal, and I reckon Ford has it bang on. The way the Everest rides, it's a mid-sized car, it's not big and bulky, they're easy to park. Same with the Ranger in the dual cab market. Just a pleasure to drive. So guys, if you want to see me make some more of these videos with different models, say the Prado, the Hilux, the Amarok and all those different ones, like, subscribe and leave your comments below of what you'd like to see in the next lot of tests. Really appreciate you guys watching the DMW channel, and I'll catch you again on the next one. Well, I hope you liked that video. Make sure you hit subscribe or you're going to get bogged.